Hey everyone, Robin from Backscatter here. Today we're reviewing the Panasonic Lumix LX100 II, a unique camera with the body and fixed lens of a compact, but the sensor and shooting speed of a high-end mirrorless. It's got the best image quality and some of the fastest shooting speed from any current compact camera. It can do 4K video at 30 frames per second, and it uses a cool set of retro-inspired exposure control dials that make my inner camera geek happy, but they also have some quirks to adjust to. In this video, we're going to cover everything that you need to know about shooting this camera underwater, so let's dive in. The outstanding image quality that the LX100 II produces is thanks to the Micro Four Thirds sensor. This is the largest sensor in our current roundup of compact cameras. It's way larger than the 1-inch sensors found on the other high-end compact cameras like the LX10, RX106, and G7X2. A larger sensor gathers more light and picks up more dynamic range detail, so we'll almost always go for the largest sensor possible when picking a camera that needs to deliver the best image quality. Sensor size is kind of the biggest thing when directly comparing cameras, and given that the Micro Four Thirds sensor is the same size as some of our favorite mirrorless cameras like the Panasonic GH5 and the Olympus EM1 II, it really makes it hard to think of the LX100 II as purely a compact camera because it turns out image quality that we'd only expect from a mirrorless. On the flip side, however, the most compact-like defining feature of this camera is the fixed 24-75mm zoom lens, and of course the palm-sized camera body. Just like all compact cameras, a fixed lens on the body means we'll need to rely on externally mounted wet mount conversion lenses to get this camera wide enough for wide angle and tight enough for macro. This will come with some compromises optically speaking, and it's the biggest difference when comparing the LX100 II to an interchangeable lens mirrorless camera. There are a couple of benefits that come along with this though, like fewer pieces of gear to acquire and pack for travel. But what we really like is that when we encounter a shy subject underwater that's tucked up under a ledge, like this grouper was, then we can work that smaller compact housing into that tight space and nail that close focus wide angle shot, whereas an SLR or a mirrorless housing just wouldn't fit in there. There's really no better choice than the LX100 II if you need a compact body camera that can deliver the raw image quality necessary for the best still photos, especially if you want to create some prints from those shots. Wide-angle photos look fantastic with the LX100 II. They're truly the best that we're seeing right now from the current pack of compacts suited for underwater. When set to f8, our corners are super sharp and we have great detail in the highlights and shadows thanks to the dynamic range that the Micro Four Thirds sensor brings. All of our wide test photos were shot with the AOI UWL-09 Pro, a wet mount wide angle conversion lens that expands the camera's field of view to 130 degrees underwater. You do have to zoom in to about 29 to 30 millimeters to avoid vignetting with a wide angle lens on this camera, as well as use a short wide angle specific port on your housing to bring that accessory lens in as close as possible to the camera lens. The LX100 II did a decent job on the macro side, but it's not going to be the camera of choice for super macro maniacs. Without a diopter, we're able to zoom all the way into the 75mm limit and get some nice fish portraits, but to get to the true macro side of things, we really need a diopter. With an accessory macro lens, we're able to get about as tight as this blenny, but that's really about the limit of how tight the camera's 75mm lens will allow you to shoot. And if this satisfies your macro fix, then no worries. But if you want to go tighter, then you might want to look at other options like the RX106 and its 200mm zoom lens, or a mirrorless camera with a prime macro lens that can go to 1:1 on its own, and then even tighter when adding in a diopter. Another macro benefit of the LX100 II is the electronic shutter, something that other compacts offer us but most mirrorless cameras don't. It allows us to shoot at shutter speeds up to 1/4000th of a second and still sync with our strobe. A shutter speed that fast knocks out pretty much all ambient light, leaving the exposure up to just your strobe, and that's just the way we want it for those dark macro backgrounds. The LX100 II doesn't only compare to a mirrorless when it comes to image quality. The shooting experience also feels much closer to a mirrorless than a compact. This is thanks to the custom assignable back button autofocus and rapid fire shooting ability. A standard technique for underwater photography is to assign the autofocus function to a button on the back of the camera and take all the focus control away from the shutter. Most compact cameras don't allow this, resulting in slow shooting speeds. The LX100 II enables us to go into the menus and remove the autofocus control from the shutter and assign it instead to the AF/AE lock. This is a key setting for SLR and mirrorless-like shooting because we can fire as fast as we hit the shutter or as long as it takes our strobes to recycle. If you want to shoot a sequence and have as many shots as possible to choose from when searching for the keeper, the rapid fire shooting speed is critical. We had plenty of frames to select from when looking for the most dramatic stingray shot from these sequences, but with most other compacts, we wouldn't have had nearly as many frames to choose from. Not only is the autofocus assignable to the back button, it's also snappy and accurate in both wide angle and macro. It snapped to focus quickly and right where we wanted it to. In general, it felt way more responsive than a typical compact camera would. But autofocus is only half the equation when it comes to the fastest shooting speed possible. Hit the menu button to access the flash settings and change that flash mode from TTL to manual and 1/64th power. TTL is fine for when you're relying on automatic strobe exposure, but your in-camera flash will take too long to recycle in between shots to really pull off a rapid sequence. By setting the flash to its lowest output, we guarantee the fastest recycle time. Some cameras, like the LX10 and RX106, are limited to TTL only, preventing them from even coming close to the speed of the LX100 II. Set the flash to 1/64th power and your strobes to manual mode and the necessary power level for your shot, and then fire as fast as those strobes will recycle. As if the image quality and rapid fire features weren't enough to make the LX100 II stand out from the pack, it also boasts a set of classic manual exposure control dials for aperture, shutter speed, and exposure compensation. These encourage shooting with full manual control, which we recommend for the best results, but they also allow for automatic settings for priority or full auto modes as well. This is cool in a hipster, classic film camera kind of way, but there's a quirk to be aware of and pay attention to while shooting. While the aperture dial has a click for every third stop, the shutter speed dial only has clicks for every full stop value. Once you set your shutter speed from the top dial, you can then fine-tune up to 2/3 of a stop up or down. The catch is that you cannot go beyond those 2/3 of a stop. You're locked out from the next full stop value until you turn the top dial to that stop. This can be an inconvenience when reacting to fast-changing scenes or when an unexpected subject cruises by and you need to quickly dial in a new shutter speed, but it could force you to have to operate more than one control to dial it in. This is the only camera in our current roundup that requires the activation of more than one control to get the shutter speed dialed in, so it takes a little bit of getting used to. With that shutter speed quirk as the one exception, every other control on the camera is easy to access and operate. The LX100 II also offers a ton of customization and tweaks that you can use to really make the camera feel tailored to you. It's just one more reason this feels closer to a mirrorless system than a compact. The front control ring is assignable, so you can use that as an alternative zoom control or as a dedicated ISO control, among plenty of other options. The quick menu, pre-assigned to the Function 2 button, offers you a shortcut to the most frequently accessed settings, many of which can also be assigned directly to a custom function button for even faster access if you want to. The main menu is neatly laid out and organized, and just about everything in the menu is intuitive and user-friendly. Shooting video is easy on the LX100 II. There's no video photo switch. You can just hit the record button and start rolling 4K 30p video right away. No mode switch means faster video access, but it also means no separate settings, so don't forget to adjust shutter speed and white balance when jumping from photo to video. Underwater ambient light custom white balance testing at the 40-foot depth range produced results that were just a little bit too heavy on the green, yellow, turquoise, and cyan side of things for us to call it a 10 out of 10 for in-camera color at depth. Fortunately, the results are close enough that a one-click white balance correction in editing brought things right back to where they should be. Executing a white balance is easy, and it's done from the rear control dial. It's a 3-button press execution, and it's just about as easy as we could ask for. There are 4 custom white balance banks for storing different color temperatures for different depths. Overall, the white balance results from the 1-inch sensor LX10 looked better past that 40 feet limit, so if comparing compacts with a primary interest in video, then we'd recommend the LX10 over the LX100 II for the in-camera, underwater, ambient light custom white balance color. The LX100 II is our pick for ultimate compact wide-angle photo camera. The image quality of the larger sensor and the rapid-fire shooting style of the back button autofocus and manual flash give it the shooting chops of a camera twice its body size. It's the best compromise between a mirrorless and a compact camera, with the caveat being felt most in the fixed lens and working limitations of accessory wide-angle and macro lenses, and the limitations of exclusive port choices that prevent wide to macro changes on the same dive. Its macro capabilities are good, but nothing really exceptional, and tighter macro can be achieved from other comparable cameras if tight macro is your main goal. Our biggest turnoff is the 2-dial shutter speed adjustment, but that doesn't overshadow the otherwise outstanding control placement and customization options. It's great to have another compact 4K 30p video option, but the ambient light color results didn't look quite as good at depth as the smaller sensor LX10. Now, quick fix and post brought the video color back to where we wanted it, but that is one more step to factor in for your video work. If you have any questions, or if you're ready to order your LX100 II system, just reach out to us here at Backscatter. We dive, shoot, and service everything that we sell, and every purchase always includes free lifetime tech support from the most knowledgeable and friendly staff around. We also lead underwater photo expeditions, workshops, and editing classes all over the world, so come along if you're ready for your next underwater photo and video adventure. I'm Robin from Backscatter signing off. Don't forget to keep your O-ring clean, back up those hard drives, and happy shooting.